with a little exercise. I want you to turn to the person next to you, and we're going to have a little conversation. I talked about in this keynote about the idea of reframing. And reframing takes practice. Looking at things from different perspectives is something that you can get better and better at over time. So I'm going to ask that you turn to a partner, and you and your partner have a conversation where one of you shares something that happened in the last week or so that was a little challenging. And your partner is going to take that lemon and make it into lemonade for you. So think about, hey, what are all the positive things or the positives about that experience that you could maybe get? And then you'll change places and do it the other way around. The person who shared will now become the ideator for their partner. So I want you to have that conversation now. I'm going to give you about 5 minutes to have that conversation. At about 2.5, I'll do something crazy up here that you'll know to switch if you haven't already switched. I don't know what that'll be. I'll have to think about that on the fly. All right, so go ahead and pair up with somebody next to you and have that conversation. Okay, I'm going to have you stop. If you see me raise my hands, raise your hands too. This is an amazing thing. I learned this actually from a colleague at the D school. She calls it the silent gong. So you go like this, and then everybody else goes like this, and then everybody's quiet. It's amazing. All right, so you have just used design thinking. You have just reframed with your partner. And this is one of the key mindsets of a design thinker, being able to look at things from different perspectives to come up with more solutions. So I want to talk a little bit more about what design thinking is, because it may be a term that I'm super familiar with, but that isn't as familiar to some of you, and so I want to share that a little bit. First of all, I want to acknowledge that design thinking is not the only kind of thinking that's useful in solving problems. I'm an engineer, and I like engineering thinking quite a bit. And engineering thinking is really useful in solving tame problems. There is no reason to reinvent the wheel. If you are designing a bridge, bridges have been designed before. And so using the equations of bridge designers before you is a really reasonable thing to do. There are variables that you're going to put in, the length of the bridge, the load the bridge needs to carry, and you should use those, right? That makes sense. So solving your way forward is a legitimate thing to do. And it's especially useful when something isn't going to change, right? The bridge does not wake up in the morning and say, like, I don't feel like being a bridge anymore, right? It's a tame problem. If you're a business thinker, you're optimizing. You have key performance indicators that you're trying to hit, and you're optimizing for those. And those may stay relatively static, the things that you're aiming for. Hey, I want to make more money for my company. Those things are things that you can optimize for. And so business thinking is a completely reasonable thing to use. If you're a researcher, you're thinking about analyzing vast amounts of data. You collect data, n of thousands, and you look at trends, you look at averages. And of course, that's a reasonable thing to do also. If you are designing your life, there's only n of 1. So an analysis the average doesn't always matter, right? We're n of 1. But research thinking, when you're trying to solve a problem and thinking about a research task, it's absolutely a useful thing. Design thinking is all about this building your way forward. And it's particularly useful when the problem you want to solve is what we call a wicked problem. And a wicked problem is a problem, that's actually a term of art from software that people came up with. And what it means is a problem that has not been solved before, that needs innovation, that maybe even changes as you work on it. Sound like life, love, trying to get an education? I mean, these problems can't be solved by writing a check. They're, by their very nature, ambiguous. They're tricky. You might not even be able to define the problem, right? The definition is changing. You're reframing as you go. So design thinking is particularly good for these kinds of problems because it doesn't assume that you know anything. It starts with wherever you are. In front of the product design loft at Stanford, we have a sign that says you are here. And that's like the Google bubble, right? You are here, here's the thing. But it's also philosophically you are here. With design thinking, we just start where we are, and we build from there. So I invite you to start wherever you are. Now, I showed these hexagons in the keynote speech. I would like to just formally acknowledge Stanford did not invent design thinking or human-centered design. We did make some really pretty hexagons, so I got to give us credit for that. But this process has been going on for a long time in making products and services. And it starts with empathy. It starts with, hey, who are the humans we're designing for? What do they value? What do they need? How can we define a problem that's worth working on? And then once we've defined that problem, how do we come up with as many ideas as possible to solve that problem? Once we have ideas, how do we prototype these ideas? How do we do low investment experiments to get more data? And take those experiments and tests back to the people that we're designing for. So in life design, we add that extra hexagon, except because we have to work on problems that we're willing to work on, right? You can't solve a problem you're not willing to have. But this whole process is an iterative process that we can use starting wherever we are. We can empathize with ourselves. We can define problems that we think are worth working on. We can get good at coming up with lots of ideas for ourselves and running little prototypes to test how they hit us. More than this process are those mindsets that I mentioned before. And these ideas of meaning making and discovery and support. So you're going to have this idea of, hey, what matters to me? What's my point of view? If you have a chance, you could write your own work view. You could write your own life view and see how those things connect, like I mentioned in the keynote. And we're not doing this alone, right? We got to work with other people. So we're going to need help along the way. And that means we're going to need practices that support our own mental health and our well-being. And we're going to need people around us who we want to be in community with. Mentors, folks who help us understand our own decision making. So this is the format of the work that we do in the Life Design Lab. And like I mentioned, this culture of mindsets is pervasive. This is how designers think. And so using these mindsets can also help you get unstuck. You heard about these during the keynote, so I won't repeat them. Now, we're all about building our way forward, so I'm going to stop talking and we're going to do something now. And we're going to do something to tap in to these ways of thinking like a designer. So you have in front of you, I hope everybody has, a piece of paper that looks like this. Does anybody not have one of these? All right. So I'm going to give you a design task. Here it is. All right, so you have a sheet of 30 circles. I hope you have a writing implement of some kind. I want you to turn these circles into something. You will have 3 minutes to do it. You can turn them into something like a smiley face, or a soccer ball, or planet Earth. All right, so this is a little creativity exercise for you. I want you to go ahead and start.
All of them, or just?
However you decide to go about it. Go ahead and get started. All right, stop. So, who solved the problem? All right, 1, 2, go. What did you do?
I made a peace sign and a sun and a smiley.
A peace sign and a sun and a smiley face. Great. Who? Yeah.
I played tic-tac-toe, I made some glasses, and I made 2 dominoes.
Tic-tac-toe, glasses, and 2 dominoes. Nice. Now, I noticed that when I asked that question, well, I guess what problem were you solving?
Make something out of the circle.
Make something out of the circles. Yeah. So a couple of people said, hey, I solved the problem. You made something. You made something. I see actually you got some stuff on the page, but you didn't raise your hand. Why not?
I didn't fill all the circles.
I didn't fill all the circles. Oh, interesting. So your problem definition was I got to fill all the circles. Yeah. Yeah. Did anybody else share that problem definition? Got to fill all the circles. That's, yeah. Sometimes and anybody else think like, and they got to be all different and super creative. Yeah. Yeah. I didn't say that. Did anybody get stuck? Who got stuck? Who had a feeling of being stuck? Yeah, what was it like being stuck? Tell me about that experience.
I'm just racking my brain trying to think of things that are circular.
Yeah. racking your brain, trying to think of things that are circular, right? And so in your mind, you're like, this got to be circular things. That's part of the problem definition. Yeah, absolutely. How does it feel in your body to be stuck? Stressful. What did that feel like physically?
Your body tenses up a little bit.
Yeah, you get tensed up, your muscles kind of clench up a little bit. Yeah. Oh yeah, how'd you like that music? Yeah, Fly Out of Bumblebee. You know, when I do this with my students, sometimes I also coach and I say helpful things like, you're running out of time. Yeah.
I have to remind myself to think outside the box because I'm an event planner and I automatically saw seating chart.
Seating chart. So you're thinking it's a seating chart. Yeah.
I tell myself to think outside of my box.
Right. But you could have made a seating chart and for somebody else. Right, that's lovely. I love it. So one other person who was stuck. Yeah. Did you get stuck, Linnell?
Yeah, I got stuck because I was trying to think of something meaningful.
Something meaningful to put in the circles. That's another part of the definition of your problem. You're like, okay, 30 circles, I gotta be creative, I gotta be meaningful, they gotta be all different. Yeah, so you've got a lot of things going on. Absolutely. How did it feel in your body when you were stuck? Yeah, a little, yeah. Sometimes I get a feeling in the pit of my stomach, right here. So, a little bit, maybe a little nauseous feeling. Some people get a headache. Yeah. How does it feel when you get unstuck? When you had that moment where it's like, oh, now I know what to do. How did that feel? Yeah, how did that feel? Teresa, you said relief, she says. She felt relief. Yeah. All right, so I've done this problem with lots and lots of folks. And there are lots of ways to solve this. But what's really interesting is that we create rules for ourselves. We create schemas, ways of thinking. And that's how our brain has gotten really good at survival, right? When we were in caveman times, we had to be able to see some situation and decide, like, post haste, like, is that a tiger or what? And then what am I going to do about that situation, right? So we're constantly looking for ways that we can categorize a problem into something that we can then act upon. And it makes sense in terms of evolutionary biology that would be the case. But what designers are really good at is trying to think of multiple schemas, different ways of solving problems. So I set you up with the inside the circle schema. Did anybody work outside the circle? Yeah, good. How about connecting two circles together? And if you can connect two, you can connect a bunch. Yeah. Yeah, so I was like, yep. Christian, you did that? Nice. Anybody use a circle as the front of a three-dimensional object or a face? Yeah, fantastic. How about circles as a texture? Yeah. Anybody say, screw this, I don't need a pen? Yeah! Yes, I didn't have a pen, but I can make something out of these circles.
It's like real life. I've got a constraint.
Yes. I love it. So how we decide to define the problem has a lot to do with what kinds of solutions we have available to us. If we said every circle has to be something different, then connecting circles together is off the table. Did anybody work with the partner? These guys did. Yes. I love it. So here we are. This feels like a little bit like a classroom, right? So, if you didn't work with a partner, there might have been a constraint in your head that says, well, that'd be cheating. Anybody have that feeling? Yeah. But I didn't say you couldn't work together. These guys actually look like they were having some fun down here. What made you guys decide to work together?
We only had one page.
So the constraint was, hey, we have to work together. We solved two problems with one stone. Yeah, I love it. But this idea of radical collaboration, right, that's a design mindset that you could have decided to employ, but you didn't because the constraint of being in a classroom setting brings all of those assumptions online that I'll be judged as a cheater. If I look over at Turia's paper, I'm like, I'll fail, right? But in fact, working together is a key thing that we can do as designers. All right, so now you know there's all kinds of different ways to solve this problem. You can even work together. You can decide how to define the problem. And I want us to do it again. So turn your piece of paper over. There should be more circles on the back. And if you need a new piece, I have some extra. Does anybody want some? Yeah. Okay, I'm going to hand that one over to her. Great. Anybody else need some? Way back there in the back, did I see a hand? All right, is everybody's good to go? All right, let's do it again. All right, how was that? Better, somebody said better. What did you like better? The music. Yeah. Another way to redo something. Yeah.
But at first, I felt more pressure.
More pressure, because you're like, now I know all these different ways to solve it. Were you trying to think of a different way and like none of the ones you see? So you still had an assumption online of like, and I'm going to come up with a different way than any of those. Yeah, great.
I knew what I wanted to do.
Uh-huh.
Very specific.
Very specific. So you're clear. Yeah. How did it feel in your body that time? I heard some laughing. I heard some people, collaborating.
You have a game of Connect 4.
A game of Connect 4. I love it. Excellent. Playing Connect 4. Yeah, it's interesting to notice in our bodies, what does it feel like to be stuck? And what's it like to get unstuck? You gotta know that you're stuck first. If in order to decide you're gonna get unstuck, you gotta know that you're stuck. So you gotta get good at recognizing, hey, how does that feel? Like, do I get a sinking feeling in my stomach? Do I get a headache? What is that like for me? And then what's it like getting unstuck, and how does it happen? Does it happen for me because I collaborate with people? Can I think outside the box? Can I decide I don't need a pen? And this idea of assumptions and constraints is super real in our lives. Right? We have got assumptions and constraints that are operating all the time. Some of them are very real, and some of them are constructs. So getting a sense of, hey, what are my assumptions and constraints? Which ones am I accepting, and which ones am I trying to reframe? That's all part of design thinking. So you just had a felt experience of being a designer, and also of iterating, right? Because it is fine to make mistakes. We can just do it again. Right? We turn the paper over. All right, so we want to have a bias to action, and I want you guys to leave here with some things you can really do in your life. And I talked about the idea of making Odyssey plans. I thought about whether or not we could do that. We usually give students about 2 weeks to do that. I figured probably half an hour wasn't enough. So I was thinking about, hey, maybe it's not about making a big change. Maybe it's just about making some little changes. Not about finding the perfect job, but making the life and job we have right now more perfect. So I thought we could go after some low-hanging fruit. So we're going to do a tool called the Energy Engagement Map. Looks like this. Everybody should have this handout. If you don't, you could draw it on the back of one of these 30 circles that has a blank back. Does anybody need a blank piece of paper? Here. Take one of these. Oh, you have additional? Great. If you want to give those out, that would be super. Okay. All right. So this is how it's going to work. We are going to list some activities that we do on a regular basis. So these are things we do in a typical week. Now, I've had people say, I don't have a typical week, and that's fine. If you do not have a typical week, pick a week that you would like to design. So I had somebody say, hey, I'm going to design a week that's coming up where I have a really challenging business trip, for example. So pick activities that you're going to be doing on a regular basis in that typical week, or if it's a week that you want to design activities you're going to have to do in that week. And just list them. So for me, I bike to work. So biking, I have administrative meetings, I have student office hours, budgeting, driving errands. I have something called the walking bus that I do walking my kids to school. I teach classes. I clean my house. I like to go hiking. You guys get the idea. So you're making a list. And then I want you to plot them versus time. I'm an engineer. I have to graph. All right, so energy giving above the line, energy draining below the line. Start with Monday and work towards Sunday. So for me, it looks like this. Monday, admin meetings. Not my fave. I like my team a lot, but working on logistics, meh. Teaching. Like teaching. I would say teaching has been a learned skill for me, though. I am I guess what they call it now, an ambivert, but we used to call it a learned extrovert, right? I learned to be okay with big groups of people. So for me, teaching is awesome. I love my students, but it also takes some energy out of me just to get my courage up to be up here at all. On Mondays, I clean my house. I clean my house on Monday because my husband and I, in order to save our marriage, we hired someone to help us with cleaning our house. And she comes on Tuesday. Yes, we do not want to admit that we are the actual pigs that we are. Don't like cleaning. On Tuesday, I bike to work. I bike from Fremont to Stanford. It's about 18 miles. It is one of the highlights of my week. It is outside, and I am not in that traffic. So it's lovely. So you get the idea. I'm plotting the things that I do against time. I have project work sessions. I have student office hours, which I just adore with my students one-on-one. On Wednesday, I have to do some driving errands. I have the walking bus on Wednesday. That's me and a bunch of kids from my neighborhood walking to school. I have trained them. They're walking 1.5 miles. It's fantastic. Now the 6th graders can lead the bus. It's amazing. Teaching. I do more driving errands on Friday. Budgeting is on Friday, and then I teach Friday afternoons and head off into the weekend where I hopefully get a family hike in. So I want you to do this exact thing for yourself. I'm going to give you 5 minutes or so. Don't belabor it too much. Just go ahead and fill out your graph. All right. So the next step, we just did a little empathy work with ourselves. The next step is to look at it and see what we notice, because there's some data in here that can help us design our way forward. So as I look at mine, one of the things I notice is that 3 of the things that really energize me are outside. Biking, outside. Walking bus, outside. Hiking, outside. And I really am in a feeling of flow when I'm biking because there's some challenge involved. I'm often trying to beat lights or track down other cyclists out there. I got Strava, so I'm keeping track of how I'm doing versus myself. So there's some flow things happening there. Being outside, and I really wish that I had more family hikes. We don't do it every weekend, and I had that noticing. The other thing I noticed was I love teaching and working with my team, but being with large numbers of people is draining, and I often set my meetings up back to back to back to back to back. So I get in this space of being a little overwhelmed. So those are some things that I noticed. I also noticed that I've got this thing going on at the end of the week here which really irritates me. Driving around and I'm budgeting, and for whatever reason my Fridays tend to be a lot less fun than they could be. And I call that to your attention because there's this thing called the best last effect. We tend to remember the best thing that happened in our week, and we tend to remember the last thing that happened in our week. So that's an opportunity for design. Perhaps I could play with that a little bit. So here's what I noticed. And I'm going to ask you to think of accessible changes. By this, I mean little tiny tweaks that you can make given what you've noticed of your energy and engagement patterns to try. Something you could do next week and just see if it makes any difference or not. So here are some of the things that I've been working on. I'm moving my admin meetings to walking meetings outside. If we don't have to do work on a computer, luckily my team is amenable to this, and so we'll walk around and talk about the logistic challenges and the things that are going on, checking in with each other on projects. And the other day we were walking around and my colleague John just stopped. And he goes, "Can you believe we work here? It is beautiful." Right? I mean, we don't often take the time to really just experience that together. So it's been a really nice thing. I'm noticing too that I could give myself space in between meetings just to walk around the building. So I've started doing this. I've started, when my meeting's over, I give myself a 15-minute block, and I literally go and walk. It takes me 2 minutes just around the design school. Because I find that if I do that, it clears my head. I'm able to center on the next meeting, and I feel better having gotten a little sun. So I'm trying that out. I can move my driving errands to Wednesday, so I don't have to do them on Friday. I don't know why I started doing them on Friday. I just do them earlier, and that way then I can take advantage of this best last effect and have the last thing not stink. And then I realized that I'm really good at calendaring stuff at work. Google Calendar, man, I am like on it. But when it comes to the weekend, we're all just laying around at home. And I don't put it on the calendar, and so everybody makes kind of all kinds of crazy plans, and my kids are 10 and 12 now, so they're starting to actually make plans on their own, and we don't have these hikes. But if I put it on the calendar, then everybody knows to hold that block of time. So I'm practicing that. Yeah.
Talk a little bit more about how you're defining energy. Is it enjoyment, or is it like a physical?
Yeah. For me, it is about enjoyment and about feeling like I have the energy to do things. So I've got the wherewithal to get some things accomplished. So that's how I define energy. Yeah. All right, so I want you to do this exact same thing yourself. Look for opportunity in the patterns that you have for yourself to make some accessible changes. You might have to do all these things, but could you do them in a different order? Could you, if you got to have that meeting with Bob, and it's the crummy meeting every week, can you bracket it with something you like beforehand and something you like afterwards? Can you put it at a place in your week where you're more likely to be able to enjoy the week, right? Are there ways you can change location? I got to do the thing, but I don't have to do it here. I could go somewhere else. I can move outside. Or who am I with? I don't know about you guys, but I've got some coworkers who I love working with. Even if we're not working on the same thing, if we're just in the same room, I feel energized. So you can seek out those people and add them in. Plan to actually spend time with people or in locations or in a sequence of events that works better for you. So I want you to take a look at your map and come up with a couple accessible changes. Oh, and one other thing I'll say is set the bar low. Accessible changes that you could try this coming week. Something simple. Like, don't boil the ocean. Right? We can do something, just something we can try. Yeah?
What if you know just on your flow chart, you just procrastinate or ignore the things that take away your energy?
Yeah, so you're just saying, like, I just don't do those. I just, like, set them aside. Yeah, so an accessible change you could make might be trying to fold them in a place where you'd be triggered to do it. An example of that might be for me, I think I mentioned I'm working on this Achilles injury. So now what I'm doing is while I'm brushing my teeth, I hate doing the rehab stuff. It's a big pain. So while I'm brushing my teeth, I just do my heel raises because I know I'm going to brush my teeth a couple times a day, right? So that's the trigger. Just reminds me, hey, do that thing. And then I do it, and I do it for whatever that is, 2 minutes that I'm brushing my teeth. But at least I get it in there. So maybe you can try to build in some things where there'll be an energy activity or a trigger that can have you try to get unstuck on the procrastination. All right, I'm going to have you guys do this. Put on a little music for that, too. Ooh, that's a little loud. All right. I think lots of you guys are already doing this, which makes me excited. Oh, I love the silent gong. All right. So you guys are already talking. I love it. What I want you to do is to pair up. You can meet with the same person you made lemonade with earlier or somebody new. And I want you to share your energy engagement map. So one person's going to share their map. Second person, I want you to reflect back what they say. What do you hear as they talk about what they've noticed in their patterns and what they're thinking about trying? And then you can comment generatively on things that you notice and make suggestions, ideate with them about things that they might try. I'm going to give you about 3 minutes a person to do this, but it's nice to be able to hear yourself say, hey, this is the thing that I might try. You have a greater chance of doing it if you voice it, as it turns out, and you can get some great ideas from a partner. All right, so go ahead and pair up now. Person one, share your map. Okay, so this is a tool that you can use over and over. Sometimes our weeks change over the course of the academic year. So if your week changes, if you have something different quarter to quarter, you can continue to use this tool. Actually, this is one of the tools that I use most frequently of the tools that we teach because it's so actionable so quickly. We often talk about managing our time, but you can think instead about managing your energy. And that might be a different frame to work with. Sequence is really important. The order in which you do things can demonstrably change your experience. So if you do all the things you hate all at once, some people really like to do that, right? They like to just get it out of the way, right? That could be one tactic, and if that works for you, great. If you like to intersperse things you like with things you don't like to kind of keep your energy up, that could be another tactic. So play with these things. Sequence is something that you can mess around with. I mentioned this in the keynote, but there is a relationship between energy and engagement and meaning making. If you are energized by something, you are more likely to continue to engage in it. If you continue to engage in it, that leads to autonomy, mastery, and purpose. That leads to meaning making. So that engagement, getting yourself in a place where you can engage by managing your energy, can be a huge tool as you design your life. And so we really hope that you will use this idea of energy and this idea of flow as you craft work and life that you find meaningful and where you will thrive. So you just did it. You just started building your way forward. We talked about this idea of building your way forward and trying small things. I mentioned getting curious and talking to people. I'm really into this trying things because ideas are cheap. Anybody can have an idea. To actually do something with your idea, that's where the rubber meets the road. But you don't have to go all in. You can just set the bar low and clear it. Every time you try something, you will learn something. And that's what designing your life is about. It's about this iterative process of trying things and learning things and trying things and learning things till you get to a life, the better life. Not the best life, just continuing to make the life that you have better. All right, so I think that's our time. If you want more life design, it'll make you happy. There is a book, Designing Your Life. You could try it. There's a workbook too. You could form a book club and do more of these exercises on your own. We also have workshops if that's something that floats your boat. So thank you so much for having me. This has been delightful. And for putting up for someone from Stanford. I super appreciate it.